Good morning, Krista. By the time you are seeing this, it will be Monday, June 30th. I am recording this right now as I'm sitting in traffic on Sunday, June 29th, because we have a giant delay. They are predicting right now 37 minutes to go 4 miles. The theme for the week, because Pride is coming up, is social equality.
Finally back. I told you a couple months ago I bumped into my old friend John William. I hadn't seen him in about a decade. We started talking about Ann Coulter, and he cited that he felt that Ann Coulter was crazy, and I was nodding my head. And then he said that he thought she was crazy because she was so brilliant and went in a weird direction. This was a first for me. I hadn't actually thought about her in a while. She had been sort of out of the limelight. More recently, she's made some waves talking about the World Cup. Ann Coulter has said quite a few negative things about the concept of soccer, and actually used the phrase, anyone whose grandfather was born in America doesn't care about soccer. This set off a few red flags for me, seeing as how that's a phrasing that's very similar to how a lot of social injustice has been perpetuated in the past. Specifically, I'm talking about grandfather clauses. There's a few topics that are almost difficult to discuss without getting into the nuances, because in the big picture, technically, they've already won. We don't have slaves anymore. That's the starting point. In the foundation of what we consider modern America, mainly by the British, but also by the French and Spanish, there was a need for a lot of workers because of the main goal of the use of the colonies was agricultural. So they needed lots and lots of people to come and work on it. Initially, they tried to do this to the native population, who promptly died, mostly because of disease that we carried, because Europeans typically were very dirty. The native population of America tended to actually be pretty clean, and as a result didn't have the antibodies for the gross things that Europeans had gotten used to living with all the time. So a lot of them died out. So a new population had to be brought in. Indentured servitude and slavery. Despite some of the less religious attitudes of the Founding Fathers, as we tend to think of them, there was still an overall doctrine about slavery that had to be addressed, and that is that slavery is not okay. Now, the fact that colonial powers had just started making contact with kingdoms in Africa who did have slaves, usually from their captured prisoners of war, made it easy for them to collect people who were distinctly different from the European settlers, that they could then create an argument were not truly human. No one can argue, however, that slavery in America was a horrible institution that was set up strictly for the profit of a select few. There are a lot of cultural biases instilled in the population built around some of these institutions that just don't quite go away just because something legally changed. There have been psych studies where people have been presented with very obvious facts and asked the question, but if everyone around them was answering it incorrectly, in large enough numbers, people would answer the question wrong because the strength of the community can overwhelm personal belief. Part of the problem is that humans are cursed with being rational beings with limited hardware. Our brains just aren't capable of working at 100% all the time. We're not capable of being rational all the time. We've got lots of hardwired instincts. Some of those are a need to dehumanize people just as a survival technique. We're living in a time now, unlike any other in human history, where we can communicate across all kinds of barriers and know a lot about all kinds of people. I don't think we're ever going to have a full answer, but we do need to start thinking about it. So the rest of this week, I'd like us to continue talking about social injustices. Put a link down below to a video discussing some of the isms that people deal with, particularly racism in this case. There are a lot of things that we can't have the answer for, but we can at least be asking the right questions. So Krista, I'll see you tomorrow.